Brent, there's probably never been a better time to talk to the inventor of the dollar milkshake theory. We have the president of the United States, who in some ways is trying to take more control over the value of the dollar, the independence of the Federal Reserve, and of course, U.S. Treasuries, all under his purview. Where does Brent Johnson see the dollar milkshake thesis in how it's playing out in 2026?
So it kind of depends on how you look at it, right? So the milkshake always had two components to it. One was that it was a framework for understanding how capital would react if we went into some kind of sovereign debt crisis. And then it was also the finale of that sovereign debt crisis. So we never have actually gotten the sovereign debt crisis. We've gotten close a few times. I still think it's possible. I don't know whether it will happen, but I still think it's possible. But the framework for understanding the capital flows associated with us moving towards one worked fantastic. And what I mean by that, I'm sure some people are sick of hearing about this, but for those who are hearing about it for the first time, essentially, in kind of the mid 2018, I think the dollar index was like at 89, it was below 90 at the time. And I essentially said that I thought that after 40 years of interest rates going down, that they would start going higher. And I thought that would have a number of knock-on effects, both good and bad. Now, interest rates didn't start rising right away. They went down initially, but they did end up rising quite a bit, as everybody now knows. But I said that higher interest rates in the U.S. would pull capital into the dollar and make the dollar stronger versus relative fiat currencies, which it did in a fairly big way. Through 2012 or 2022, it went from 88 in 2018 to 112 or 113 in 2022. And since then it's pulled back about 10% or 15%. So it's kind of, if you really zoom out, the dollar's gone sideways for 15 years or 10 years, but that's despite all the money printing, all the bailouts, all the stimulus. So the more controversial part of the theory said that even though interest rates would go up and even though the dollar would go up versus other currencies, that gold would also rise and that U.S. equities would go higher. And I said all of this would be characterized by crazy volatility along the way, but essentially dollar up, bonds down, gold up, U.S. equities up, and that capital would flow from the rest of the world into the United States. So all of those things that have happened. The only thing that hasn't happened is the crisis. And I'm to be honest, I'm okay with not having a sovereign debt crisis. That doesn't actually sounds pretty interesting, but I don't know that it sounds fun, right? Okay, so that was a long way of getting around to answering your question. The short answer is I don't know, but I think all of the variables are there for us to have a sovereign debt crisis, and the dollar, is a big part of that. Trump and the Trump administration clearly wants the dollar weaker, but I don't think they want the dollar as weak as many others seem to think that they do. And even if they want it dramatically lower, I'm not sure that they can get it without some crazy policies put in place. And I don't think we have had the events yet that would allow them to put those policies in place. And I think those events that would allow them to put those policies in place would probably initially send the dollar higher. So that's a long way of saying I don't know, but the framework is a good one for understanding the type of period that we're in right now. And the last thing I'll say before I, bore everybody to tears with this is in the very first time I ever talked about this theory, I said, this is not a scenario where the dollar remains the global reserve currency. This is the process via which I think it could potentially lose the global reserve currency. It's just that the path to losing it is the DXY rising rather than the DXY falling. So anyway, that's a long way of saying I don't know, but I'm very interested.
And Brent, one of the things that I'd like to discuss with you is these stable coins. These are tokens or coins, cryptocurrencies that have a one-to-one or a supposed one-to-one backing with some stable asset, whether that's a US dollar, whether it's gold, whether it's some other asset. A lot of people have said that this has actually increased the dollar's hegemony. And now, because anyone in the entire world, if they have a smartphone or access to a crypto exchange, they can buy US dollars, that this has cemented the US dollar, that basically there's now another chance at life for the US dollar to assert its hegemony. It's almost cemented its status as a US reserve currency around the world. What do you think about this stablecoin argument that, yes, maybe with Trump, he's pushing these other countries to think about diversifying away from the dollar, but with the power of stablecoins, the actual citizens of those countries can move with their feet, vote with their currency, and choose the US dollar rather than their own local currency?
Well, for anybody that's saying that, I totally agree with you. And I think I've written 2 reports on this in the last 4 or 5 months dealing with this exact issue. Without making too many bones about it, I think that stablecoins, and specifically US dollar stablecoins, there are other stablecoins, and we can talk about those as well. But I think US dollar stablecoins have the potential to be as transformative to the monetary system as when Bretton Woods was set up, and then also when the US broke Bretton Woods and removed the dollar from the gold standard. Those 2 events had huge ramifications for the global monetary system. I think stablecoins have the potential to do that. Now, whether they will or not, the future is still unknown, but I have come around to the idea that these are extremely powerful tools, and I've gone as far as to say it's a stealth weapon of empire. And many other countries around the world are waking up to this fact, and they are terrified, and they should be. So, yeah, I agree with it.
And Brent, the way we discuss it in our 2026 Gold Outlook report, we say in a way there's this kind of barbell happening where on one side you have the US dollar just dominating this currency competition between paper or fiat currencies. Most people aren't going to pick a Turkish lira if they have an option on their smartphone. They're going to pick a US dollar simply because that cleanest dirty shirt in the laundry argument, well, none of them are great, but I'd rather pick the US dollar versus the Argentinian peso, for example. And on the monetary front, whether it's Bitcoin or gold or silver, really gold and silver have dominated this monetary question where people ask, if I really want to hold value for the next 100 years rather than the next 100 minutes, I think I'm going to own some gold. Do you think that because of this bifurcation in currency and money, that all of these secondary monies, whether it's Ethereum or other cryptos, or these secondary currencies, whether it's the Ghanaian currency or the Indonesian currency, these are going to really fall by the wayside in 2026?
Well, I don't know about 2026, but yes, that's what I believe is going to happen. And if you think about it, what you said at the very beginning, this barbell where a number of people are fleeing to gold, but within the fiat community, everybody's fleeing to the dollar. That is essentially what I laid out in kind of my milkshake theory and my milkshake framework. And quite honestly, this is one of the reasons why I have enjoyed talking to Keith over the years, because I felt like he understood where I was coming from. For the most part, agreed with it. We don't know. It's fun because Keith and I don't always agree on everything, and it's kind of fun to argue with him on the things that we don't. But for the most part, we come at things from the same place, and I think we both try to approach these things rationally.